This is our homily for Sunday, July 28th, the 17th Sunday in Ordinary Time. A nervous young minister was preaching his first sermon and started out, "I wanted to talk about Jesus' miracle in feeding 5 men with 5,000 loaves and 2,000 fish." A man yelled out from the back of church, "That isn't a miracle. I could do that." The young minister was so flustered, he couldn't finish the sermon. The next Sunday, he tried again. This time, he said it correctly. Jesus fed 5,000 men with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He glared at the man and said, "Bet you can't do that." "Oh, yes, I can," said the man. "I would just use what was left over from last Sunday." This year, our Sunday Gospel readings in Ordinary Time are from Mark. But starting today, for 5 weeks, we hear from chapter 6 of John's Gospel about the Eucharist. The chapter begins with many people being fed with a few loaves and fish, moves through Jesus' comments that he will give his flesh to eat and his blood to drink, with many followers leaving him because of these words, and ends with Peter's declaration, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life." One learning for us in the multiplication of loaves is that God can take the little that we have, and if we are willing to share, he can do miracles. But we have to be willing to share, as was the boy in the gospel. If the boy had hoarded the bread and fish for himself, refusing to share, the story would have ended there. With that at a context, that is, if we're willing to share, God can do miracles, I want to look at the second reading from Paul's letter to the Ephesians. Paul is talking to a local church where there is tension between the Jewish Christians and the Gentile Christians. He is urging unity. 7 times he reminds them and us that we are one through our beliefs. One body, one spirit, one hope, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all. Unity. We are called to bring unity and peace. Our world is a mess. Our country is a mess. Politics are a mess. Our church is a mess. Some of our families are a mess. And by a mess, I mean fighting, calling each other's name, refusing to listen to another point of view, and so on. In the face of it all, we can throw up our arms and say to ourselves, "There's nothing I can do. It's too big for me. It's overwhelming." Just as the disciples did in our gospel today, faced with feeding the large crowd with almost nothing. But my friends, we can do something. We can offer our little part, our 5 loaves and 2 fish. And St. Paul tells us how, and I quote, "I urge you to live in a manner worthy of the call you have received, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another through love, striving to preserve the unity of peace through the bond of the Spirit." Imagine if every person who calls themselves Christians would live that way. It would make a difference. It would change the tenor of discussion. It would move us toward a peaceful and gentle world. We all can make a difference by how we react at home at work, in traffic, and so on. I repeat what Paul said, quote, I urge you to live in a manner worthy of the call you have received, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another through love, striving to preserve the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace, end quote. So the reflection I invite us to this week, what are one or two specific areas or situations in which I can bring more unity and peace rather than disunity and unhappiness? What can I do to make sure I react in a better manner? My friends, Jesus can take our efforts to bring unity and peace and multiply them to change the world. We can make a difference. And so I urge us all to go make a difference. God bless.